Hello everyone, let's start the panel. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining the panel. We have amazing speakers today. And the hottest topic of 2026 is RWA, of course. So let's briefly start with the first question. And the most relevant to the local region is, of course, regulation for real-world assets. As we know, UAE has two main frameworks. One is ADGM in Abu Dhabi, and the second one is DFC in Dubai. So how do you see the choice of the issuers? How to help clients and businesses to choose between these two frameworks? What to pay attention at or how to adjust it to their businesses? And to build the legal structure, how it affects the technology. And the main question is regarding the other world and cross-border legal structure. So how adjust and build this bridge, for example, with Europe or other countries. If you're like set up in here, what's the benefits?
Perhaps I will take that question. Thank you so much. My name is Rios from Saja Legal Consultants. So I see three different layers in that question. First, if it's DIFC, for example, versus ADGM, I believe that the answer is not actually technical, but market exactly. And it depends about where you are raising the funds. So among my clients, I see that when clients have a close proximity to the language of FCA, for example, because they are in Europe and the capital are also there, they feel more alignment with, for example, the IFC. However, clients from Singapore, they have similarities or commonalities with the language of course, mass, so they would prefer ADGM and FSR exactly as related. But the second question about what is first, in my perception, regulatory architecture comes always first because you have to get clarity on what is exactly the legal proposition you have to provide to your clients. And it's the first questions for investors. So exactly what are the clients, what are the arrangements, what are the custody arrangements, the banking arrangements, where the assets are based, and what are the rights that exactly your token holders are going to link with those tokens are essential. So this is definitely first than technology. Technology is modular, technology can be modified, but legal structure is something that you have to get clarity on that before. And the third layer, I notice among my clients that teams have tendency to perhaps provide more importance to the token issuance, for example, or the tokenomics. However, this legal structure is essential, as I mentioned to you, because it's where institutional capital is going to ask you first. They are going to see how sound and how clear you have this, and then decide into if you get the deal or not.
Let me continue. So my name is Baiba Broka, and I'm General Counsel of the first Sharia-compliant real-world tokenization platform, Ramani, and ZigChain as well. So, and we just now in a process to get our second license from DFC in the IFC for funds tokenization. And why we actually choose to go this pathway, because if you look to the DIFC, so regulatory requirements and framework is very advanced, but also what I prefer that they adopted also those rules which relate to proprietary aspects of the digital asset itself. So, and I think it's very important because if you look around in different countries, so legislators try to focus on the regulatory aspects, how to issue licenses, how to supervise the business. But somehow everything like a real core about the proprietary aspect of the digital assets itself, it's somehow a little bit staying aside. But I'm proud that, because I'm also a member of the Governing Council of international organization UNIDROIT, and we adopted the first international legal instrument on digital assets and private law, which is asking each national legislator to recognize that digital asset can be the object of property. and DIFC have done it and implemented this international legal instrument in the Digital Act of DIFC. And this is something very important that we can cover, not only this procedure, regulatory aspect, but the core content of the digital asset itself. So that's why I think, this is like slightly different, but both also, again, there's a lot of the aspects why we as the consultants advise to choose one and the other jurisdictions. But being here in UAE, we really have this advantage to use that it's fast developing framework and possibilities, and to be able legally correctly to implement those new challenging from legal architecture ideas, how to tokenize all real world assets.
Thank you, Baiba. It's difficult to speak after two lawyers, I'm an engineer. Before I answer the question, I want to ask you, is anybody here going through the process of doing a real world asset tokenization? Anybody in this room? Everyone? Anybody in the audience? Right? Okay. As you can see, only 2 people. It's a very new process for many people, and it's something that is very misunderstood. My name is Gustavo Montero. I'm the CEO of Standard Chartered Bank in Switzerland. I opened the bank myself. I ran it for a few years, but I'm an engineer, so I left the banking world 10 years ago to go into blockchain finance. I don't like to call it Web3. There's too many misconceptions here. We've done a few tokens in the past. We're currently tokenizing $10 billion worth of in-ground gold in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Chile. That's what we're doing right now. So the answer to this question is, because we're doing it, I can tell you that whatever regulatory environment is out there, it's a mess. First of all, it's a mess. Second, it's different in every single country. You don't find the same type of regulatory environment, which makes it very difficult to say, what are you going to do? So for me, and as an advice to everybody here that wants to do that, in reality, you should not focus on the places where you live. You should focus on the places where you want to sell your tokens. That should be your main focus. If you think that your market is the US, because it's a very large market, then your regulatory environment, whatever you start, needs to match that environment in one way or the other. Otherwise, you have this entire fantastic project that you built, that you pay these lawyers fantastic fees, that doesn't work, right? So it is really, really essential to focus on that point as the starting point, not on this point, because you will find differences everywhere. And the second thing that I'd like to say on the onset, which is very, very important, and people don't understand it very well, focus on the asset. What is that you're trying to tokenize? The majority of things that you would like to tokenize are worthless, right? If I want to tokenize my very old Range Rover that I drive in Dubai, I cannot tokenize it, it's worth nothing. But I could, why not? Because technologically, it is possible. So your first starting point is the asset that you want to tokenize, something which has an interest for the public, where you're going to sell it. And as Baiba correctly said, is the ownership clear behind that? So this is some of the essential points that you have to start with. But I think the regulatory environment, the place where you want to sell your token is essential, and the asset that you're going to tokenize. Just going to say the following. If you try to tokenize a building in data here in Dubai, probably will not work, right? Because nobody knows data. But if you try to tokenize the tallest building in the Sheikh Zayed Road, maybe you have a chance to do something with it because everybody knows about it. It's an asset that eventually you can call liquid, right? So this is some of the initial considerations. We'll go back to other things.
I agree with everything Gustavo said. I mean, how do you follow? I can have my 2 cents, right? Long ago, I was a banker, and I was this back in 14-15, and a good chunk of my cash flow was tokenizing pre-IPO securities. So back then, Uber and Alibaba and Airbnb, these are all pretty hot pre-IPO securities, and there's a lot of family offices in Southeast Asia that needed access to these things, right? And typically, you have the son of a rubber baron or a palm oil baron who's gone to Harvard or the right schools, right? And these guys don't get access to those. These days they do because the funds are out there shaking down capital from everywhere. But back then, you couldn't really get access to these cap tables, right? So my whole niche was get access through the Valley contacts, create an SPV, throw in a 15 and 30, not 2 and 10, 15 and 30, that's a 15% fee and a 30% carry. There's a lot of skimming going on there. Back then, that was the market standard. And you would sell these down to family offices or, private banks in that part of the world. And then, there's a bee in the bonnet. Why don't I tokenize this thing? So there's something in Bitcoin called colored coins. So back in 2016, I had a few developers and raised a small amount of capital and created this platform. And then I sort of launched it, right? And then in like a week, I had like 30 million in interest of. And the whole premise was I didn't want to go sell an Uber block door to door in Singapore and convince people to buy $1 million blocks. I wanted the retail guy to come in and buy a $10 token of Uber or a $20 token of Alibaba, and I built this beautiful tech, right? And then what we realized, and then as our panelists pointed out earlier, the problem is not technology, the problem is regulatory, right? You want to sell any of these things in any part of the world, you need if it's a US security, you need a FINRA registration, Series 7, Series 63, you need a full alphabet soup of legal empowerments, right? So the problem hasn't shifted big time in the last decade or so. It's still a regulatory and legal. That's a big problem, right? I mean, the tech has been sorted, and the tech keeps improving. I can go on and on, but I'll.
Hey everyone, Alex Davis here from Mavryk. We built a layer 1 for and a full stack tech stack for tokenizing real world assets and integration with DeFi and secondary markets. Well, a lot to say after all of that, so I'm not sure who to address or who to counter, as I like to keep things fun. But long story short, when it comes to the original, to circle back to the original question, is like DIFC, ADGM, or the US regulations, which they effectively have none, or they're at least TradFi, right? It's just TradFi regulation placed on digital assets. You just have to move on, like Gustavo said, where you're focusing on selling the asset. When it comes down to it, we're still in such an early stage of tokenization. For the most part, 90% of people who are talking about tokenization don't know effectively anything about it. It's their new buzzword that they'd like to say, and then they're literally calling issuing tokens tokenization, which I think we should start bringing back, the gallows. But long story short, most people who are actually talking about tokenization aren't actually doing anything, as you saw from, again, Gustavo's question. There's one panelist here who's actually doing it, and another person in the state in the audience. So if you actually think about, well, I know one more person over there who's doing it too, but he's not paying attention now. But the actual people on the ground who are doing tokenization, great. You've tokenized something, you've put a digital wrapper on top of an asset, you've put it out there, and there's no liquidity, because tokenization does not mean instant liquidity, it's a misnomer. There's increased liquidity, but not full liquidity like Bitcoin. But then who's buying these things? How do you access them? If you just tokenize something and put it into a digital ledger, you might just as well use Excel. If you don't have a platform, like I was brought up yesterday from, and if you see the stage over there, MBIO, Mavryk and Equities powers all of multi-bank's RWA tokenization on our chain and using our tech stack. And the interesting thing about that is you'll actually be able to go in as an institution, a family office, or a retail user, go in and buy these assets. And someone yesterday at the office was asking me, they're like, oh, this other chain, they've tokenized 20 billion in assets, yada yada. I was like, okay, cool. Where can I actually go buy these assets if they're tokenized? And it was dead. There was nothing there. There was no place to buy it. It's all a bunch of malarkey, which is, Google that one. And long story short, you might as well just use an Excel sheet. It's all just a buzzword for people to raise capital or look cool or put some BS posts on LinkedIn. So the real benefits of tokenization outside of everything we know, fractionalization, increased liquidity, yada yada, is You actually have to get it into people's hands. People have to be able to access it. They have to be able to buy, sell, trade, take loans against it. If you're just taking care of one singular point of the tech stack or the regulatory stack on tokenization, congratulations, you failed. You've effectively failed. So if you're not giving access to the public, if you're not allowing them to have a secondary market of some capacity, whether it's an order book or an AMM or a bulletin board, you're not allowing them to use that asset to take a loan, you've effectively failed at tokenization. Use an Excel sheet.
Thank you so much. Let's switch to the next question. And it's also partially covering the first one, but let's talk about the biggest and main verticals of RWA. And the largest one is, of course, real estate. So the main question regarding it is, what blockers do you see to build the fractional investments in real estate via RWA framework? Because even in Dubai, it's still under the development. So let's talk about bringing real estate on chain. we can start like from here, and yeah, I think it's okay.
All right. Okay. Okay. Just gonna try to be short. I think the problem is not real estate. The problem is liquidity. There is no liquidity in this market for anything that is a real world asset, tokenizing. And the reason why there's no liquidity is because liquidity is not with these young people in this room that they all have $1 in their pockets. The liquidity is with people like me, old ex-bankers that have stacked liquidity everywhere else. Is called $98 trillion of liquidity against $2 trillion in our market, in our crypto markets. So the problem is not the asset. The problem is how do we move this money from guys like Gustavo to his project, all right? That's the reality of the situation. Now, the bad news is that it's not going to happen from one day to the next because the guys in the board of directors that have the money have my age and they don't understand anything about what we're talking about. Zero. They're just waiting for retirement somewhere. The good news, on the other hand, is the great wealth transfer, right? You all know about it? The great wealth transfer? Okay, within the next 10, 20 years, about 1/3 of the global wealth in the world, which is $1 trillion, so $30 trillion, will go from me to my daughter, who is now 19 years old, and will take all my money in 5 years. She is a young person, like everybody else, and they will take that money and invest it in this area here, right? So, as I said, the problem is not the asset, it's the liquidity, because we can tokenize anything, really. But who, as you said, who's going to buy it, right? There you go. I'll give you the point. You have a lot of the. But anyway, I think those are the parameters to it. But you need to understand that there's no liquidity in this market today. It's coming, certainly it's coming, but it is a bit slow because the legal part behind this, the regulatory environment, is still a mess for the next 5 to 10 years. It's not linear. Countries say different things about that.
Yeah, I think actually real estate probably is not the largest and the most interesting. I think the private credit is already a bigger market share of tokenization. But when it relates to the real estate, I always start with what exactly are we tokenizing? So what is it sell? And if we are marketing for the people saying you can buy right now 1 square centimeter of this new beautiful building to be built, it's false. So again, we have to understand what is the subject of tokenization and how we structure it through the different SPV structures and either the equity or either the exposure or either it's like a derivative economic exposure to the equity and shares. So this is very important how we start from the very beginning to structure it properly, because as a colleague told me also, we on our blockchain, technology can do everything. So it's not a problem of that. And I fully agree, even if you manage to solve this puzzle of the legal, all the hurdles, and it's very clear what you are tokenizing, what you are offering to people to put the money in, so and facilitating this democratization of the investment market or financial inclusion, we call it. So the next step is really distribution channels. How you partner with the institutions which want to be partnered or either through the banks with the ISIN code that we are currently doing, or are you trying to find these platforms for tokenization? This is very important also for real estate, how you reach the end user who's ready to buy this, to invest those money there.
First, I agree definitely that it's not real estate but private credit what is actually the main vertical for real world asset tokenization, and the answer is very simple. It's because there is less regulatory fragmentation. For investment token, it's easier to just harmonize regulations that already exist. The deployment of capital, for example, from family offices is already there, so the structuring, the infrastructure to create that is always ready. I believe that there are so many interesting points about regulation, and is that first, I believe that we are now building products and services for even the generations that are in their 20s. We are actually building the products and services for the alpha generation, that they are around 12 years old now, because they are grew in a AI era where everything was digital and is native and organic for them. So I believe that these are actually the users. The reason why there is no liquidity is because regulation is not there. So harmonization, I am not really very friendly or very pro-harmonization, because the fragmentation of regulatory framework is connatural to blockchain. It's global. When we are thinking that the regulatory advisor, for example, have to focus in a jurisdiction, is actually not true. The reality is that it's expectable that cross-border transactions, cross-border infrastructure is necessary, because users are also to be in different jurisdictions. So it's not one jurisdiction, it's not one regulation, it's actually, once as I said, the legal or the Lego proposal that you have in the legal structure, legal architecture. So at the end of the day, liquidity comes with regulation, which I believe is not a mess. It's actually growing, it's actually in the infancy, and so much things forward. Learn, of course, from the side of regulators, but also from products and services, and who are going to invest in those tokens in the future.
Oh boy. Respectfully, I mostly disagree with you guys. Gustavo, you all had points I liked, but to chime into it, long story short, there's no lack of liquidity in the market because regulation or institutions or all these different things. These are inherently, natively illiquid assets by nature. Just because you slap a digital wrapper on it does not turn it into a liquid asset. If you take, actively traded shares of Tesla or Bitcoin or gold, and you put it into a marketplace, these are things that institutions and now trading bots for the most part, and retail clients and CFD brokers are all trying to trade these highly liquid assets. But I guarantee you, if you compare the liquidity and the trading volume of gold versus a REIT, which a REIT has a regulatory wrapper, it's digitally there, maybe not tokenized today, but it doesn't, just because you now have this wrapper to trade it, or the regulatory wrapper to have it, does not mean that liquidity will fall there. These are natively illiquid assets. People will not have trading CFDs on the Sofitel in Dubai. It's not something that it's not a sexy thing to do. It's not something that there's where to make money on it. And so when it comes to illiquidity, the reason why we don't have it is because we keep trying to tokenize garbage, for the most part today. If you look at the liquidity of tokenized gold from Tether, XAUT, they're doing 250% volume on the outstanding gold that they have there today, because these are natively liquid assets. Like, I just got back from Africa for a gold deal, the king, I can't tell you till Monday, but they're like all of these things that it's about distribution, where I completely agree with you. The secret to tokenization right now is tokenizing yield-bearing assets, specifically yield-bearing assets. Real estate is a low-hanging fruit of that. But the young people, our generation, we don't
for the most part, as a societal group, do not have access to investments. You're gate-kept out of any real estate deal if you're not ultra-wealthy. Look at Reg T, for example. You can only have 32 retail investors. That's the United States, but they lead the pack. And the stock market, which is effectively manipulated and overpriced. And so you can't buy most of these assets. Tokenization, real-world assets, blockchain is a non-violent, non-kinetic, violent attack on over-regulation of investments. So, what you brought up, I hope your daughter has a very, very, very long time until she inherits, the wealth of the great transfer in your case. But right now, today, what can you go buy that you actually feel comfortable earning money on? Dividend stocks that pay you less than the rate of inflation? Real estate that you can't afford the down payment on? Any of you guys own car washes or cash cows? Anybody in the audience owns a car wash? Part of a car wash? Hotel? Airbnb? So it's not about, like, the whole world eventually will get tokenized, don't get me wrong. We're going down to a route of AI replacing jobs and the unfortunate calamity of universal basic income going to need to be a mandatory thing. I hate it, but it just looks like it's going to get there. But everything of value will eventually get tokenized. We won't call them RWAs, they'll just be assets. So this great wealth transfer, this RWA tokenization, which is also just an answer to the garbage we've been pumping out in crypto for the last 8 years, is the future of everything. Every young person who downloads Robinhood or buys Bitcoin instead of any other investment, it's the future of how humans interact with value. And the first part of that will be yield-bearing assets that give them something tangible in their lives. So that's, I guess, my take on it, but I tend to want to be controversial.
Yes, thank you. Amazing answers. And let's cover another biggest RWA vertical. Traditional finance, as you know, has clear RWA use cases, yet adoption is still limited. So what main blockers do you see in these use case scenarios? Also liquidity, legal frameworks, or institutional demand? And how would you suggest to fix this gap or to scale this bottleneck? Thank you.
So, one of the big things with institutions is they need, obviously regulatory clarity is one big thing, as the panel has been discussing. The other thing is obviously capital efficiency and capital efficiency is a big thing, and that comes from having deep liquid markets. And sort of going back to the previous question on what Gustavo said and the gentleman from Mavryk said, at the end of the day, this is just a distribution mechanism. It's RWAs and tokenization are not 0 to 1, they're not 1 to 10, they're 100 to 101. Right? They're going to be embedded deeply. Robinhood is already selling everything from perps to prediction markets to every damn thing. And so tomorrow, if Robinhood throws in a real estate deal there that's hugely lucrative or interesting or yield bearing, it's going to have demand, right? But going back to the question, if it's liquid, if it's an attractive market, institutions will come, they'll provide the trade finance, they'll provide the scaffolding, the whole shebang. But if it's not, as the gentleman said, if you're trying to sell some asset, packaging it up in the whole crypto hype, it's not going to work.
Okay, I love all your points. We're going to have great conversations. Let's assume for a minute that this is a 1 kilo gold bar right here. Worth what, $100,000? Let's, 1 kilo? 150, even better. This is a gold bar, 150. Does anybody here has $150,000 to put in this gold bar? There's one man there, yeah? One, anybody else? All right, bravo. I'm gonna sell it to you 400, just to, be nice to you. Now I'm going to take this same gold bar here and I'm going to tokenize it because I have 2 lawyers here that can do it and someone that can help me with the technicals, and I'll divide this in 1 cent tokens, all right? I don't know how many there will be, but there will be lots of them. Yeah, but just let's 1 cent tokens. It's right here. How many people will here buy 1 cent tokens of it? 1, 2, all right? I want to go back to the point that my beautiful Mavryk friend mentioned a minute ago. Liquidity, all right? The whole thing about tokenizing world assets is that the asset has to be considered liquid by the buyers. Now, worth should be worth nothing, by the way, because it's useful for nothing other than beautiful earrings or things like that. We basically don't use, I'm an engineer, we don't use it in the industry. However, why is it considered by all of you as a store of value? Because it was the first store of value we ever had. That's the only reason, by the way. There's no other reason. So, what I'm trying to say here is that I fully agree with you. I disagree with you on some things, but I fully agree with you on the fact that if you have a liquid asset, a fully liquid asset, and you tokenize it, everybody will buy it, right? That's all. So that is the future of this business if we have one. You need to find the right liquid assets, tokenize them, and put them in the right market like this one.
Yeah, to continue also, I think it's a very great example how to see the tokenization, but coming back to financial instruments, I think from the legal perspective, honestly, I don't see so big blockers. It's more about to find really technology infrastructure provider who is ready to build it and understand, and because again, liquidity is a magic word we are talking about all the time. And I think, the blockchain actually as a technology and tokenization can open the doors to liquidity, but it doesn't mean that, liquidity is guaranteed only by the tokenization itself. So, but what I see, so the easiest right now, and also institutional, but from traditional capital market institutions are ready to start adoption of the tokenization of the financial instruments they are comfortable with and they know from the traditional, and I'm saying private credit. I think it's a really big market right now, which is everything what relates factoring, invoicing. We see, based on our experience, that's what we are concluding a lot of the partnership in that field. And this slowly opens the door also for them to join. And from the legal perspective, as I told, there are rules and regulations in place combining traditional financial market with the digital, and it's literally just the time to find the proper structure, through again, coming back, what exactly we are tokenizing, this economic interest or whatever, and but it's possible already today. So I don't see really big blockers from the legal perspective or technology perspective. It's more mentally, are we ready to adopt this new approach?
It's more fun when you guys say things that I disagree with. I was hoping you would tell me, but when it comes to actually what it's going to take to get RWAs out there, I think we need to start with it's not liquidity. I think I've given my point of view on that. Obviously, you need to be able to sell the assets. The low-hanging fruit is yield-bearing assets, as I've mentioned before. Insurance-linked securities is a completely untapped market when it comes to it. Private credit, we're tapping into. Right now, there is technology, but unfortunately, you're still missing mature brain power that can merge technology with business sense. And you're seeing people who still say today, oh, well, I tokenize this house as an NFT so I could sell it to anybody. Or we tokenize it so it should sell like hotcakes. And it's just not how it works. If you actually look at the amount of tokenization platforms that are out there today that are decent, and by decent, I mean like you can go there and after 20 minutes of figuring out their stupid UI UX buy something, it's probably 5. 5, and 3 of those are crap user experiences. So we still have a long way to go in terms of market maturity and distribution are probably the 2 most important factors to get it out there. You look at every single cycle since the ICO stage, it's been ICOs,
DeFi, we got a little bit intelligent with that one, well, very, and then we just got stupider and stupider and stupider every single cycle. We went from NFTs to meme coins to prediction markets being not gambling, and now we're coming back to RWAs as hopefully the saving grace. So one, market maturity. You've got great tech, wonderful. You've got business sense, wonderful. Merge them together, because we literally explained tokenization to a king on Saturday, and you have to do it so high level because what they need is the business side, and then what we have is the tech side. You need to be able to merge those things together. But the real key, and this is where I agree with you on, is distribution. Right now, there's effectively no distribution. Everyone wants to be their own distributor. Everyone wants to have their own marketplace. We built the equities tech stack for ourselves, and in the end, we actually licensed it to Multibank. You can see their OTC desk right over there. They have 2 million plus users. We wanted to launch our own exchange. It's just smarter to partner with other distribution channels, these massive behemoth of aircraft carriers that take a year to make a U-turn when startups are jet skis and they can turn on a dime. So if you're a tech company, if you want to do some sort of tokenization, if you've got deal flow, find a distribution partner that can actually move your product for you. And that's effectively what we did at Mavryk, is don't own your own distribution channel yet. Grow vertically, then horizontally. But you need to take a good asset, don't slap lipstick on a pig, it won't sell. Take a good asset, find something that people actually want, put it into an environment where liquidity can come to it. It's literally field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. So liquidity will find its way to you. Buyers will, it might not be liquid to trade 24/7, but it'll come there. Find a good product, put it into a good environment, find the right distribution channel, give it access to financial services such as secondary markets and or lending, because most private equity, everything we want to do in the tokenization space is mostly the private equity field. It's not liquid secondary markets. It's private credit, it's lending. How many people in the crowd own a home or a real estate or something? Definitely more than 2 or 3 of you. 4, 5. Half of you are lying. Anyways, how many of you guys who own some form of private equity or a home have a mortgage on it or a loan? It's all about lending on private equity. It's not about wildly liquid secondary markets. They need to be there. Don't get me wrong, bulletin boards, AMMs, order book dexes, etc. But you need this full environment. You need mature business sense. You need to marry technology with intelligence. And quite frankly, right now, you've got 3.5 platforms that do it. So that is the key towards RWA tokenization, is stop trying to become a billionaire overnight. Build something of value.
I just, one comment that came into my mind, you reminded while we were talking. So one of the challenge from legal perspective actually, which can guarantee easier access to the liquidity, is when we tokenize financial products like private credit. And so it's very regulatory. So every investor has to be checked, a proper KYC has to be done, we have to know where the money is coming from. And this is blocking why we cannot open fully doors of the liquidity, because a lot of liquidity is in DeFi. You know, in DeFi is usually no KYC, no, whatever, you know, so I just said decentralized finance, you know, a lot with the project, and this is how to legally find a way through the vault structures and the SPVs, how to also access this big part of the, like, you know, the assets.
I love that. Distribution, yeah, I said it before, absolutely right. But you said something which I think is the key to this entire conversation, thank you for bringing it up, is who are you going to partner with in order to distribute your asset, all right? So for instance, we are at the very early stages of tokenizing $10 billion worth of in-ground in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Chile. Very early stage, very early, right, to be honest with you. However, I keep telling my board of directors, so I invented the project, I'm the chairman of the board, but I have a board that was going to make decisions, is that we may end up never coming to the end of this project because someone is going to buy us, all right? Who's going to be that? A bank that wants to get into this, a large, very large family office, some kind of financial institution, etc. Because they are the ones that have the ecosystem, just to use a word in our area, that have the possibility of distributing the token that we will create against that gold. Not us, someone else. I would say that if you have the right project, the right asset, I would say, that's very liquid, you probably end up selling it to a third-party financial institution that wants to get into that, but doesn't want to go through the entire process of creating it, because it is complex. We know that, and the lawyers know that very well. And it is not always easy to do so. So I think that what you said is absolutely right. In order to get that distribution, you need to get the right bank, the right financial institution that can do it for you, and you probably sell it to them. That's it. You may keep 5% for your daughter, so she'll be rich as well. And that's it. That's the end of it. But that's probably the most logical way for real-world assets tokenization to go into the vast liquidity pools that are not in our industry. There's somewhere else.
Thank you so much. To continue this question, let's touch more user onboarding and secondary market topic. So as we just talked about, that RWA liquidity is still thin and not enough yet. Which model do you think mostly like to solve this problem? I mean, for example, OTC desks, regulated exchanges, or DeFi protocols that makes and retail investor onboarding more easier way, while they still meeting KYC, IML requirements and other issues. So how to help and how to bring more retail investors and to increase liquidity?
Because as I mentioned, one of the tools which has to be considered also, so it's not about by any price to get all the DeFi users to start, providing liquidity. Still, there's a lot of sanctions and that of the legally based restrictions which we have to observe. There should be in place some kind of like wallet screenings or whatever. And there are the vault structures which can be used somehow, but still, we have to find a proper balance, to solve those problems which relate to also the absolutely legit purpose, to protect all the financial market from the terrorism money and war money and whatever. And there are possibilities, and also we see that regulations towards to decentralized protocols are growing one or the other way.
So this is a very interesting question. I studied in the crypto market 10 years ago in South Korea, 2016, and then what I observed is that still we have only 6% or 7% of market penetration in the crypto industry. So if I want to answer the question how to bring more retailers, actually not only to real-world asset tokenization, but also other segments and verticals in the crypto space, is when those token holders have more clarity about their rights and enforceability of what they are holding. If I actually selling, even if I have a perfect distribution, token, infrastructure, if I sell a token to a client or to a token holder that doesn't know what to do with this, doesn't know how to sell it, if something goes wrong, where that person can go and take an actions for protect the capital that it was invested there is nothing. So I believe still regulation is essential, because in real world asset tokenization, more than any other vertical in the virtual asset, because we are touching real world, it means there are regulations there that needs to be or adapted or modified or in a certain way harmonized domestically to give those clarities to the token holders. So short question, when the token holders have clarity and enforceability of their rights when they are having the tokens.
Oh boy, this is what we do day in and day out at Mavryk, so it's it's an exciting question for me. How do we bring more users in retail? Will it be DeFi protocols or TradFi protocols? So long story short, we built this thing called the Equities Tech Stack. It is everything from the pre-tokenization stages of consulting and due diligence to issuing the token to the primary issuance to investors of the token or distribution, depending if you do a public sale or if you just pre-distribute it to the investors, to 3 different kinds of secondary markets. We built an on-chain order book DEX. We built a proactive market maker that uses an off-chain valuation as an anchor or a guide price, so the prices are not radically affected by liquidity in the pools. And we also built a bulletin board secondary market, call it OTC, call it a smart contract escrow, effectively. Long story short, what we've done, well, with Multibank, as you can see them over there, is we've actually deployed the order book DEX as the same way that you'd move money from spot to futures or perps, you'd move your money from spot to your RWA sector. In that transition, you actually you move your money into spot, and that's a custodial centralized exchange. When you move to RWAs, it's actually a non-custodial wallet within a custodial exchange. So you actually have full control of your assets at all times. They are permissioned assets as RWAs, but you still have full control of the USDT in that wallet. You still have full control of your RWAs in that wallet. You can transact whenever you want. The interesting thing about that is you brought up KYC and money laundering and terrorism financing. Well, anti-terrorism financing, which should have the A there, but is that you can still have KYC on these DeFi platforms. People choose not to build them. We built our RWA token standard with the ability to embed KYC into the token or not embed KYC into the token. And it really depends on what the regulators say at the end of the day. To be fair, you don't have to KYC the token at the token layer. You need to KYC at the platform layer, the on-ramps and off-ramps. Because at the end, it's not up to a regulator to say, why can't you get a loan out of Argentina and you can't get a loan out of Brazil, for example. So it shouldn't be at the token layer itself. There is the capability of it, but that will actually ultimately limit you in ways that today we're not limited with private equity. So when it comes to how do you onboard these users, when every single time that we talk to an institution about tokenization, their main concerns are more so, is it secure? Because just in the last 60 days, there have been 2/3 of $1 billion stolen in DeFi products. Mostly EVM, by the way, which we don't use because Solidity is a terrible language for security. But it's what their primary focus is security. We don't want another FTX to happen on the NBIO platform using Mavryk. We built it in a way that can't occur again. Security is mostly the paramount problem when it comes to onboarding institutions. Liquidity will come, good deal flow will come. Retail users need access, and they need access to good investments. If you look at, not trying to throw shade at a competitor, although they are an inspiration, if you look at Lofty, the due diligence that they do on the real estate that they're tokenizing there are just glorified private equity loans. They're selling you a tokenized asset in Austin, Texas. I may or may not own some. That effectively is I think the way that most of the deals work there, because they structure them oddly, is that the person who tokenizes their asset has the right to buy back that asset from the buyers at a 20% markup in 10 years. So forgive me if I'm getting the math wrong, but it works out to like you are guaranteed a 2% return per year on the RWA that you just bought. And the person who tokenized it is basically given a long-term loan at a super cheap rate. So we're still in this place where we're not offering retail users anything of value. So when you have these platforms, think of XAUT from Tether, think of, Realty's done a great job at their UI, their customer experiences. So we're still in this place of, as I said before, market maturity. Build something people want to use. They'll come. There's 8 billion people in the world. People are throwing their money at meme coins. They'll throw money at your RWA project if you give them something of value. Stop messing around. That's how you do it. Life is not more complicated than that, no matter what the field you're in. Give someone a reason to come to you. That's it.
I love what you do, by the way. Great job. So let me tell you a story about an old man. When I was the CEO of Standard Chartered in Switzerland, we had this theory that it will take me the same amount of time to go and look for a client that will give me $1 than for a client that will give me $1 billion. not only the same amount of time, the same amount of work, because the paperwork was the same. So when it comes to where are we going to get our clients, I would say, with all due respect, not in crypto conferences with all these face-tattooed kids with $1 in their pocket, right? It's just the wrong place. So we are going to raise some capital within 2 weeks from now for USDR Commodities that is will be tokenizing gold. And I will be sitting in conferences with bankers. I will not be in any conference where there is crypto people because they have $1 in their pocket. That is where the money is, all right? Let's be real, because otherwise we're just kidding ourselves. Monies are in conferences where you have large institutions with large pools of money, and they're thinking, what about if I put 5% into these guys? Right, or pension funds as well, right? So that is where these clients with large pockets, deep pockets are in banking, insurance, or simply large financial conferences in the world. That's where you should spend your time and your money if you want to raise any serious, meaningful capital for a good real world assets tokenization project.
So guys, we should wrap up. I would like to thank you amazing experts who take part in our today's RWA panel, and to the audience who join us to listen our sharp topics. Yeah, any questions from the audience? Because we are a little bit limited in time.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I won't be taking much of your time. It was a great panel, but what I really wanted to talk about is how Alex spoke about how assets are liquid when you back them up. I think what you're looking for is liquid clients. Now, another question is that these assets in the UAE are backed, they're liquid, let's say real estate, gold, they've got their distributions in place, they've got their needed KYC APIs in place, who do real-time KYC. Yet they're facing this issue of, travel rule. They're not being able to implement that. Now the regulations are in place for that, but how do you bridge that gap? I'd really like to ask the legal experts sitting here. And then what takes me to the next part of this question is, how do you implement that in cross-border jurisdictions, especially where retail clients or investments are not allowed? Let's say, for example, China. Right? So how if I am an owner of fractional ownership of gold or real estate here, and I want to transfer that to China where the asset supply is huge, how do I do that? I would really like to know from you guys. Thank you.
That's a very interesting question. And it works in the same way as any other regulation in the crypto industry, and it depends about where you're operating. For example, if you are an individual natural person or corporate, also those rules applies in a different way. So particularly among my clients, I saw that because they have cross-border type of infrastructure and corporate, they can also handle the regulatory risk based on that, if I would say, regulatory spread that they have used. So this is exactly the way why when you are advised by a legal expert in crypto, it's the best way to exactly manage all those kind of risks, not only for the travel rule, but also the regulatory frameworks that applies to your business.
Absolutely, it's the same. The travel kind of rule is only one small part of all the general block of the information that relates to onboarding individuals and institutions as well. Along with the proper transaction screening, everything. So there's nothing different like we would do for any other regulated industry. And because of technology right now that we are building, so there are these layers of AML requirements which can be implemented and focused. And of course, the beauty actually of the industry is that it's absolutely cross-border industry every day. So, and the technology is fully adapted to that as well.
When it comes to the travel rule, you can build it into the centralized platform. When it comes to once you take that asset off the centralized platform, you're typically sending it to yourself, and then what you do as a private individual is your business as a private individual. If we start trying to enforce having governments sit there and say, you cannot sell this asset to someone from that country, we have much bigger problems in society than that. But if you're just trying to sell to, if you're a platform here in the UAE trying to sell to China, or trying more so trying to market to China, then you actually have to get regulated locally. Multibank has 17, 18 licenses now. They're about to go, I think, move it up to 20 licenses around the world, that some of them allow them to operate in different places, but there is what you do as a centralized platform and how you market and sell your digital assets, tokens, RWAs, digital securities, however they end up being framed, because the US is still 10 years behind. But what you do as a private individual and what happens with DeFi, look at Tether Gold, for example, or look at any other token that gets taken off of a centralized platform. It trades freely in a digital sphere that regulation still hasn't found an answer to, and also that, you know, how do I say this, private individuals have freedom of economic movement. So if you just take that out, if you want to sell it, I don't know your name, but let's say you're based here and you want to privately sell you gave a loan to somebody else and you've got a contract on it and you want to sell that to a Chinese individual, you can in the private sphere. And that's something that we should continuously work to protect, to not gatekeep digital finance the way that we've now gatekept domestic finance. So it's on the platform layer. It should not be on the technology layer.
So before being a banker, I was an auditor. I was trained by Pricewaterhouse, and as an auditor, I audited according to GAAP. You're familiar with GAAP? It's just a financial standard, right? We all understand what a financial statement is in the world because we have GAAP. In the case of tokenization, tokens, crypto, etc., we don't have a unified way of seeing things. You will get as many answers as different questions you ask. So it is still the Wild West for me there, and it will be for the next 10 years until someone says, these people have to pay taxes. That's when it's going to change. Right now, you're going to get hundreds of answers.
Sorry, we must wrap up, guys. We're out of time. Thank you again for coming and joining the panel. Let's let agenda go forward.